Ambassador Kai Sterling had been warned repeatedly with increasingly serious language and steadily rising emphasis during the morning briefings. His chief diplomatic advisor, Lena, had displayed holographic projections of Queen Elara Voss, each image showing a tall, poised figure in flowing ceremonial robes, her face as cool and distant as an uncharted nebula. "Do not approach her under any circumstances," Lena stressed. "Do not speak to her directly. Do not hold her gaze unless she grants permission first, and never, under any conditions, make contact with her horns. Those crystalline extensions are sacred vessels of her lineage, channels of ancient energy that no outsider has ever touched without invitation." Kai had tried to lighten the mood with a small smile. "You are painting her like some eternal guardian from forgotten myths." Lena's expression made it clear she was already questioning his readiness for the role. "She is the sovereign of a dominion that predates human spaceflight by thousands of years. She has held absolute power for 50 years, with flawless emotional discipline. In all that time, no one has observed her reveal anything close to everyday warmth or approachability. She is the living form of tradition itself, and she will not accept a human diplomat behaving with anything resembling casual familiarity." That exchange lingered in Kai's thoughts 6 hours later, as he stood inside the soaring Great Hall of the Royal Palace on Orion Prime. The chamber rose to heights that seemed to touch the edge of the atmosphere, its ceiling lost in soft glowing vapors that drifted like slow-moving clouds. Delicate crystal lattices climbed the walls in precise geometric patterns, emitting a gentle radiance that shifted in time with an unseen pulse. The floor beneath his boots was a seamless sheet of polished obsidian stone, reflecting every figure so clearly that the entire assembly appeared to float above a second, inverted universe. Hundreds of Auralis nobles occupied the space, their tall frames draped in intricate garments that shimmered with embedded starlight threads. Their skin carried faint, shifting hues that mirrored inner feelings, while elegant crystalline horns curved gracefully from their temples, each one adorned with jeweled bands that announced family rank and personal history. Every pair of eyes turned toward Kai with a mixture of measured interest and quiet reservation. Humans remained recent visitors to this region of the galaxy, still viewed more as curious newcomers than established equals. Sending an ambassador at all had apparently been interpreted as either a bold gesture or an act of unexpected optimism. Kai held his exact assigned position, 15 measured paces from the central throne, doing his best to project quiet confidence. Lena remained at his side, her posture tight with restrained tension. Then Queen Elara Voss entered the hall, and every voice fell silent at once. She moved with effortless grace that transformed each step into a deliberate expression of poise. Taller than any other Auralis present, she carried an aura that filled the vast chamber without effort. Her skin held a calm azure tone that briefings described as the mark of total composure. Her horns rose in elegant arcs, catching the crystal light and scattering it into faint rainbow glints along their translucent surfaces. The robes she wore seemed woven from captured moonlight, draping and flowing around her like liquid starfields. Her emerald eyes passed across the gathered nobles with the quiet precision of someone assessing a familiar and well-ordered domain. The entire assembly bowed in perfect unison. Kai lowered his head as instructed, keeping his gaze respectfully downward. He heard the soft, measured rhythm of her footsteps crossing the reflective floor and the faint rustle of fabric as she took her seat. "Rise," she commanded, her voice carrying clearly through the stillness without any need for amplification. As the nobles straightened, Kai did the same while maintaining his downward glance at the level of the throne. "We convene today to consider matters of governance and to extend formal recognition to the representative from Terra," the Queen stated, each word delivered with flawless control. "Ambassador Sterling, you may step forward." Lena tensed visibly beside him. Direct summons from the sovereign herself fell outside every prepared guideline. Kai advanced slowly, counting each pace in silence until he reached the exact distance protocol allowed. He bowed once more. "Your Majesty, I am deeply honored to stand before you on behalf of humanity. I carry greetings, sincere hopes for lasting cooperation, and the official letters of credential required by tradition. as he lifted the sealed documents to present them at the precise angle and distance. The close proximity demanded by custom caused his fingertips to brush, ever so lightly and entirely by accident, against the smooth, sensitive tip of her right horn. A faint vibration traveled through the crystalline structure. For the briefest instant, the horn's cool silver sheen warmed to a soft amber glow that pulsed once before fading. Queen Elara's emerald eyes met his directly for a single heartbeat, revealing a flash of surprise and something deeper, an ancient spark that had not stirred in decades. The hall remained utterly still, yet in that unintended touch the first quiet fracture had appeared in the wall of perfect isolation that had surrounded the Queen for half a century. The Queen's skin held its calm azure tone, yet a subtle shift lingered at the edges, where faint golden threads now traced delicate patterns along her collar. She accepted the documents with measured grace, her voice remaining perfectly even. "These will be examined by my council in due course. For the present, Ambassador Sterling, you will observe the proceedings. There may be lessons here regarding the governance of enduring civilizations." Kai returned to his position beside Lena, whose face had gone several shades paler. She whispered without moving her lips, her tone sharp with warning. "Do not speak again unless directly addressed. Do not move closer, and for all the stars, keep your hands to yourself." Kai offered the faintest nod, his heart still racing from the accidental contact. He had felt the horn's surface, cool, smooth, and strangely alive, like touching a living crystal tuned to an ancient frequency. The formal session unfolded with ritual precision. Noble after noble approached the throne along exact pathways, offering reports on trade routes, planetary defenses, and scholarly reforms. Each speaker maintained strict distance, used only approved phrasing, and waited for the Queen's brief, incisive questions. Queen Elara presided with flawless authority. Her responses were clear, balanced, and free of any visible emotion. Yet Kai, trained to notice the smallest details, began to catalogue faint signs that others seemed to miss. When military matters arose, her skin cooled to a deeper indigo for just a moment, suggesting quiet concern. When a young scholar presented ideas for expanding educational access across distant colonies, a warmer rose tint brushed her cheeks before vanishing. 2 hours passed in this careful dance of tradition. Then came the scheduled recess. Servants moved silently through the hall, offering trays of shimmering refreshments that carried the scent of spiced nectar and distant blossoms. The nobles formed small, carefully ranked groups, their skin tones shifting in subtle conversation. Kai and Lena were guided to a quieter alcove near the edge of the chamber. A senior Oralis official approached them with polite but probing questions about human governance and planetary management. Kai answered carefully, keeping his replies brief and respectful, while sipping a cool, effervescent drink that tasted like sunlight mixed with wild berries. Without warning, the quiet murmurs throughout the hall faded. Conversations halted mid-sentence as the assembled nobles parted smoothly. Queen Elara walked directly toward the diplomatic section, her steps purposeful and unhurried. Her skin had warmed noticeably to a soft golden hue that the briefings had described as a sign of genuine interest. Several council members followed at a respectful distance, their expressions a mixture of confusion and barely concealed alarm. Lena's fingers tightened on Kai's sleeve. "Stay perfectly still," she breathed. "Bow and do not speak first." Kai lowered his head as the Queen stopped directly before him. "Ambassador Sterling, you may rise," she said. Her tone carried the same controlled clarity as before, yet something new threaded through it, an undercurrent of quiet curiosity that had been absent during the formal addresses. As Kai straightened, Queen Elara did something that sent a visible ripple of shock through the entire gathering. She lowered herself gracefully onto the simple stone bench positioned beside the diplomatic area, the plain seating meant for attendants and lower-ranking guests, never for royalty. The bench that no sovereign had occupied in living memory. The hall grew so quiet that the soft hum of the crystal lattices overhead became audible. "You may sit, Ambassador," she continued, a faint trace of amusement coloring her words as she observed the stunned reactions around them. "Unless you prefer to remain standing while I look up at you from this modest place." Kai glanced once at Lena, whose eyes had widened in pure disbelief. then met the Queen's emerald gaze. Up close, her features held a striking beauty that felt both timeless and unexpectedly alive. He sat carefully on the bench, maintaining proper distance, yet aware of how close they now were. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "I am truly honored, though I must admit I am quite surprised by your choice of seating. A queen has many important figures in her court. Why choose to sit beside a relatively new human representative?" "Perhaps I find relatively new human representatives more intriguing than the familiar conversations of my court," she replied. Her skin continued to warm, shifting toward a gentle amber that spoke of engagement. "You have been observing me closely during the proceedings, Ambassador, not with fear or mere curiosity, but with the eyes of someone seeking to understand the person behind the crown." Kai felt a rush of caution mixed with honesty. "I apologize if my attention seemed improper, Your Majesty. I meant no disrespect. I was simply trying to see beyond the rituals to the thoughts guiding such important decisions." She tilted her head slightly, the crystalline horns catching the light in soft glints. "That is a rare perspective in these halls. For 50 years I have been addressed as the throne itself, never simply as Elara. Tell me, during the discussion of the outer colony reforms, what thoughts crossed your mind?" Encouraged by her direct question, Kai spoke carefully about an efficiency model his people had used during early planetary settlement projects. He explained the rotational resource system in clear terms, noting potential benefits and risks without presuming to instruct. Queen Elara listened with focused attention, asking sharp yet open questions that showed both deep knowledge and genuine interest. Their conversation flowed naturally, moving from logistics to broader ideas about balancing tradition with necessary change. Around them, the court watched in stunned silence. Lena stood frozen several paces away, yet on that simple stone bench, Queen Elara and Ambassador Kai Sterling continued speaking like two minds exploring shared challenges rather than sovereign and visitor. The ancient heart that had remained carefully guarded for decades had felt its first unexpected spark, kindled not by grand ceremony, but by an honest human voice and one accidental, gentle touch. The recess ended with a soft chime that echoed through the great hall, drawing everyone back to their formal positions. Queen Elara rose from the simple bench with effortless dignity, her skin cooling once more to its composed azure tone as she returned to the throne. Yet the subtle amber warmth at the edges of her features lingered just enough to be noticed by those who watched closely. Kai resumed his designated spot, aware that the entire assembly now carried a new undercurrent of tension mixed with fascination. Lena remained silent beside him, though her occasional glances spoke volumes about the diplomatic tightrope they now walked. The afternoon proceedings continued with the same ritual precision, but something in the atmosphere had shifted. Nobles presented their reports with extra care, their eyes flicking occasionally toward the human ambassador. Queen Elara presided as before, her questions sharp and her judgments balanced. Still, Kai caught those small telling moments, the faint darkening of her skin when a proposal risked overextending distant outposts, the soft glow that appeared when ideas emphasized long-term harmony between colonies. She remained the picture of sovereign control, yet the wall of perfect detachment showed hairline cracks that only he seemed to recognize. When the session finally drew to a close, an aide approached Kai with a formal message. "Her Majesty requests your presence at tomorrow's private council discussion on infrastructure development. Your insights may offer valuable contrast to our established approaches." The invitation carried the weight of command rather than request, and Lena's expression upon hearing it confirmed the unprecedented nature of the summons. That evening, back in their assigned quarters, Lena paced the room with measured urgency. "This is moving far beyond standard protocol," she said. "Queens of Orion do not sit beside foreign envoys on common benches. They do not extend personal invitations to closed council sessions, and they certainly do not engage in extended conversation that reveals genuine curiosity. Her emotional discipline is not merely habit, it is a sacred cultural expectation. For 50 years, she has maintained absolute distance to preserve stability. If she is choosing to lower those barriers with you, we must understand why before this creates lasting complications." Kai listened quietly, then offered his perspective. Perhaps after ruling alone for so long, she simply values a fresh voice that speaks without layers of court politics. Ruling billions while remaining completely isolated sounds like an immense weight to carry alone. Lena stopped pacing and fixed him with a serious look. Isolation is not a burden to her people. It is the foundation of sovereign strength. Be respectful tomorrow. Answer honestly when asked, but do not volunteer personal opinions unless invited. And above all, maintain proper distance. The following morning, the council chamber proved smaller and more intimate than the Great Hall, yet its quiet elegance felt even more imposing. 7 senior advisors sat around a polished elliptical table of dark crystal, each one a figure who had served the Queen for decades. They regarded Kai with expressions ranging from guarded suspicion to outright disapproval as he took the seat indicated, 4 positions from the Queen rather than the distant observer's place usually reserved for guests. Queen Elara sat at the head, her skin a neutral silver grey that revealed little. "Ambassador Sterling, please join us," she said smoothly. "We are reviewing proposals for new relay networks between the outer sectors. Your perspective from human expansion projects could prove useful." One advisor, a tall elder named Advisor Valen, spoke with careful formality. "With respect, Your Majesty, the ambassador lacks the historical context of our economic frameworks. His input may create more confusion than clarity," the Queen replied without hesitation. "Then we shall provide the necessary context. Begin your presentation, Advisor Valen, and ensure sufficient background is included so our guest may contribute meaningfully." The discussion unfolded with measured intensity. Advisor Valen outlined the proposed trade corridors, highlighting massive infrastructure costs and strategic considerations. Other advisors raised concerns about timelines, resource allocation, and political implications tied to ancient alliances. The debate grew layered, each voice presenting competing priorities rooted in centuries of precedent. Kai listened attentively, then offered measured thoughts when the Queen turned to him. "The central relay hub controlled by the merchant guilds carries high access fees," he noted. "Yet even accounting for those costs, the overall expense remains lower than constructing 4 new stations from scratch. Prioritizing total control is understandable for security reasons, but acknowledging the trade-off in efficiency could open better negotiation paths." Silence settled over the table. Several advisors stiffened, their skin flashing brief tones of irritation. Queen Elara's neutral grey warmed noticeably to a soft golden hue. "Continue, Ambassador," she encouraged. Kai expanded on his ideas, outlining cost comparisons, potential negotiation strategies with the guilds, and alternative routing options that could balance efficiency with strategic security. Some suggestions met immediate dismissal for reasons tied to unique Oralis technology and long-standing political tensions. Others sparked genuine back-and-forth discussion. The session transformed from stiff presentations into a living exchange of ideas. Advisors challenged Kai's assumptions, and he responded by questioning theirs in return, always with respect. Queen Elara guided the conversation with incisive questions that pushed everyone to justify their positions more deeply than usual. 3 hours passed quickly. When the Queen finally concluded the meeting, she announced calmly, "Ambassador Sterling will attend future council sessions. His perspectives provide a useful contrast to our long-held frameworks. You are dismissed." As the advisors filed out, some still casting wary glances, the chamber emptied until only Queen Elara and Kai remained. The silence felt different now, less formal, more open. "Your Majesty," Kai began, "I hope I did not overstep during the discussion. You challenged 3 of my most experienced advisors and compelled them to re-examine assumptions they have held for decades," the Queen replied, rising and moving toward the wide window overlooking the palace gardens. "Do you consider that overstepping?" "I consider it the risk of being asked to leave future sessions for presumption," Kai said with a small, honest smile. That drew a soft, surprised sound from her, almost a laugh. Her skin warmed further to a gentle copper tone. "Do you know how long it has been since anyone in this chamber offered a truly fresh idea instead of carefully polished positions designed to avoid any appearance of uncertainty? 17 years, Ambassador. 17 years of refined but stagnant counsel. My advisors are loyal and brilliant, yet they fear appearing unprepared before their sovereign. They bring only complete proposals, never the exploratory thoughts that lead to real progress. She turned to face him fully, her emerald eyes holding a depth he had not seen before. Yesterday on that bench you spoke to me as Elara rather than as the Crown. You asked what I was thinking. You treated my curiosity as valid rather than presumptuous. That is remarkably rare. I was definitely intimidated by your presence, Kai admitted, yet I also wanted to understand the person making the decisions, not only the throne delivering them. Queen Elara studied him for a long moment, her horns catching the garden light in soft glints. Why do you not fear me as others do? I am cautious, Your Majesty, Kai replied honestly, but I have learned that treating someone with genuine respect often reveals more than perfect protocol ever could. She gestured toward the bench near the window. Sit with me, Ambassador. No titles for this moment, simply conversation. They spoke for nearly 2 hours about human approaches to governance, the challenges of rapid expansion, and the delicate balance between preserving heritage and embracing necessary change. Queen Elara asked thoughtful questions that showed sincere interest in human culture, while Kai listened as she shared carefully chosen insights into Oralis history. Gradually the sovereign mask softened, her shoulders relaxed, her skin held a steady copper warmth that spoke of comfort. For the first time in decades, the ancient heart behind the crown felt the quiet stirrings of connection, sparked by one accidental touch and nurtured by honest words in a quiet council chamber. The evening gathering took place in the royal gardens, a living masterpiece that stretched across rolling hills behind the palace. Bioluminescent flora created natural sculptures of soft light, while graceful water features defied gravity to form floating streams that shimmered under 3 moons. The air carried a delicate fragrance reminiscent of night-blooming blossoms mixed with crisp mountain air. Attendees numbered around 50, all dressed in simpler yet still elegant attire that allowed for relaxed movement. Their skin tones shifted freely with conversation, creating a gentle symphony of colors across the garden paths. Queen Elara arrived looking noticeably different from her formal appearance. Her robes flowed in deep emerald tones that complemented her eyes, and her dark hair cascaded freely past her shoulders, rather than being bound in the severe style of court. The crystalline horns rising from her temples caught the garden lights in warm reflections. Her skin held a steady bronze hue that briefings indicated represented comfort and contentment. She moved among her guests with genuine grace, exchanging words with various nobles and ministers, yet her gaze kept returning to one particular figure. Kai stood near a glowing pool, engaged in conversation with a city planner about sustainable urban designs. When the Queen approached, she introduced him not as the Terran ambassador, but simply as Kai, who brings fresh thoughts on resource management and possesses a talent for unexpected observations. The casual introduction eased the formal tension, allowing genuine exchanges to unfold. Kai found himself discussing music with a cultural minister, sharing stories of human artistic traditions, and even debating defensive strategies with a military advisor who grudgingly acknowledged the value of outside viewpoints. Throughout the evening, Queen Elara gravitated back toward him. Their conversations resumed naturally between her duties as host. They eventually settled together on a curved stone bench beside one of the larger bioluminescent pools, somewhat apart from the main clusters of guests. "This is pleasant," she said quietly, watching colored light dance across the water's surface. To simply exist beside someone without the constant performance of sovereignty. Kai nodded, choosing his words with care. It must feel exhausting to weigh every gesture and word for its political meaning, every response monitored by those around you. She turned her emerald eyes toward him. "With you, I find myself less concerned with controlling every reaction. That should concern me, yet it feels unexpectedly freeing." Her skin maintained its warm bronze tone, occasionally deepening to copper when she laughed softly at one of his lighter remarks about human attempts at terraforming. Several nearby guests glanced over in surprise at the sound of their queen's open amusement, but she seemed less troubled by the attention than before. "Tell me about these gardens," Kai asked, genuinely interested. "They appear far more than simple decoration." Queen Elara's expression brightened as she explained how each section represented different eras of Oralis history. The glowing vines in one area carried genetic memories of ancient voyages, while crystal formations in another echoed the songs of early rulers. This garden was her personal endeavor, a way to stay connected to her people's past amid the demands of present rule. As she spoke, her passion became evident. Her hands gestured with natural animation, and her horns caught the light with each slight movement of her head. They continued talking as the gathering slowly wound down. Eventually she rose and motioned for him to follow. "There is something I wish to show you, if you are willing." She led him along a narrower path that wound upward into the hills behind the palace. The trail proved steeper than expected, definitely not designed for ceremonial processions. Queen Elara navigated it with familiar ease despite her elegant robes. "This does not seem very queenly," Kai observed with a smile, trying to keep pace. "It is not," she replied, a hint of mischief in her voice, "which is precisely why I come here so rarely anymore, too undignified for sovereign appearances." She glanced back at him. "Try to keep up, Ambassador. You represent your entire world at the moment." They reached a secluded overlook that offered a breathtaking view. The capital city spread below in a tapestry of lights, with 3 moons hanging bright in the clear night sky and stars appearing close enough to touch. Kai caught his breath at the beauty. "I used to visit this place often in my early years on the throne," Queen Elara said softly, as she settled onto the smooth, warm stone. "Before duty consumed every free moment, and I accepted that sovereigns have little time for personal retreats." Kai sat beside her, their shoulders nearly brushing. "What made you want to share this with me tonight?" "Because you asked what I truly wanted earlier, not what was expected or strategic," she answered. "This is what I wanted to share, a place that reminds me I am more than the crown I wear. A view that makes me feel connected rather than elevated and alone." They sat in comfortable silence for several moments before she continued. "I find myself wanting to share more with you than I have with anyone in decades. Conversations that are not calculated for advantage. Moments where I can simply be Elara instead of the eternal sovereign. It is dangerous," she added quietly. "My court expects complete emotional mastery. They expect distance." Kai turned toward her. "Connection does bring risk, but it also brings strength. The feeling that you are truly seen by someone." He reached carefully for her hand, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. When she did not, he gently interlaced their fingers. "I care about you as Elara, not merely as the ruler of this dominion, about the person who tends living gardens of history and finds beauty in quiet overlooks." Her skin glowed with a rich copper gold in the moonlight, practically luminous. "If I choose this path with you, there will be consequences," she said. "My advisors already question the wisdom of public familiarity. If personal feelings become clear, the pressure will increase." "What do you want?" Kai asked simply. "I want to keep choosing connection," she replied, her fingers tightening around his. "To remember what it feels like to be seen as a person first, even if it complicates everything." They remained there together as the capital slept below, 2 beings from vastly different worlds, allowing an ancient heart to awaken through gentle touch and honest words. The night held a quiet promise that whatever challenges lay ahead, this moment of genuine connection felt worth every risk. 3 days after the garden gathering, the political storm arrived without warning. Kai was reviewing trade documents in his quarters when Lena entered abruptly, her face etched with concern. "An emergency council session has been called. The Queen's senior advisors are demanding she address what they term inappropriate personal attachments that may compromise sovereign judgment. They are not being subtle. Your growing closeness with the Queen has become the central issue." The emergency session convened in the formal council chamber behind closed doors. Only the Queen's 7 most trusted advisors, along with Kai, whose presence had been specifically required, attended. Queen Elara sat at the head of the table, her skin a carefully maintained neutral silver that gave nothing away. Her expression remained composed, the mask of perfect sovereignty firmly in place. Kai took his assigned seat and tried to project calm confidence despite the heavy atmosphere. Advisor Veylan spoke first, his tone respectful yet edged with sharp concern. "Your Majesty, this council shares a grave worry that must be voiced openly. In recent days you have deviated markedly from long-established protocol." You sat beside the human envoy on a common bench before the entire court. You invited him into private council sessions. You included him in an informal gathering reserved for close household members, and you have been observed engaging in conversations that suggest personal attachment rather than mere diplomatic necessity. I am fully aware of my actions, Advisor Valen, Queen Elara replied, her voice steady and controlled. Please continue with your specific concern. Our concern is that personal feelings may be clouding your judgment, the advisor pressed. That emotional needs a sovereign is expected to manage privately could be influencing decisions that affect the entire dominion. That allowing a human to gain undue influence might weaken our strategic position and traditional stability. The accusation hung heavily in the air. Several advisors nodded in agreement while others watched Kai with open calculation. Kai remained silent, waiting for the Queen's guidance. Queen Elara rose slowly and moved to the large window overlooking the gardens, her posture straight with restrained authority. For 50 years I have been precisely the sovereign you required, she began. I have maintained complete emotional discipline and careful distance. I have governed without allowing personal bias to affect my rule. I have been the living embodiment of tradition, untouchable, isolated, and constant. I accepted this role without complaint because I understood it was necessary for the stability of our people. She turned to face the council directly. But in those 50 years, not one of you has ever asked what that isolation truly cost. What it means to exist as an institution rather than as an individual with needs and feelings. What it requires to carry absolute authority for decades without any genuine acknowledgement that even a sovereign is still a living being. Your Majesty, another advisor began. But Queen Elara raised one hand to silence further interruption. Ambassador Sterling has reminded me that true leadership need not demand the complete erasure of one's own personhood, that I can guide our dominion effectively while also allowing myself to be seen as Elara. That honest connection does not automatically weaken judgment. In fact, it can strengthen it by bringing perspectives that isolation alone cannot provide. Advisor Valen leaned forward. With respect, Your Majesty, the appearance of such attachment creates dangerous political vulnerability. Your opponents will exploit this. They will question your decisions and suggest your judgment has been compromised by emotional influence from an outsider. Let them try, Queen Elara responded, her voice soft yet carrying absolute conviction. I have guided this dominion through 5 decades of challenges, strengthening our position and maintaining peace through difficult times. My record stands clear. If anyone wishes to challenge my authority based on claims of compromised judgment, they must first present concrete evidence that my recent decisions have weakened our dominion. Can any of you demonstrate that my governance has suffered? A heavy silence fell across the chamber. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but offered no specific examples. No proof emerged because none existed. Queen Elara's recent choices had shown renewed energy and creative insight, rather than decline. Then perhaps your true concern lies not with effective governance, but with preserving traditions that serve your own comfort and influence, she continued. Traditions that rely on my complete isolation so that all access to the throne flows only through you. I am not abandoning my responsibilities. I am not permitting personal feelings to override strategic needs. I am simply acknowledging that I am both sovereign and individual, and that 5 decades of sacrificing the latter may no longer be sustainable or necessary. Kai spoke carefully when the Queen nodded permission. I understand this situation feels unusual to all of you. My friendship with Her Majesty developed unexpectedly, yet consider what is truly being asked. 50 years of absolute solitude while surrounded by people. 50 years of being constantly observed but never truly seen. Is that the only possible model for strong leadership? Or has it become a structure that protects certain power balances rather than serving the Dominion's greatest good? I do not influence Her Majesty's policy decisions, he added. We discuss ideas openly. We challenge assumptions together. That collaboration comes from mutual trust and honesty, not manipulation. The fact that we also care about each other as individuals only deepens that trust. One advisor responded coldly. You speak with considerable presumption for one so newly arrived among us. He speaks with honesty, Queen Elara countered firmly. "Which is exactly why his perspective holds value. I am weary of deference that masks control and concern that disguises attempts to limit my personal choices. If you have legitimate worries about specific governance decisions, present them with evidence. Otherwise, this session has served its purpose." The advisors could offer no such evidence. Eventually, they filed out, some visibly frustrated, others thoughtful, all aware that a fundamental shift had occurred in the balance of expectations surrounding their queen. When the chamber emptied and only Queen Elara and Kai remained, the silence carried new weight. "That required courage," Kai said quietly, "and it was likely politically risky." "It was necessary," she replied, her shoulders relaxing slightly as exhaustion showed through her composure. "They have grown accustomed to my isolation because it keeps power flowing through their hands. By forming a direct connection with you, I have disrupted that pattern. They see it as a threat to their influence." "What happens now?" Kai asked. "Now we move forward carefully," she said. "They will watch every decision for any sign that my feelings affect my judgment. Every moment we spend together will be examined." Her skin cooled to neutral gray, yet when she looked at him, it warmed gently once more. "It will not be easy." "But worth it," Kai said, reaching for her hand. "Yes," Queen Elara agreed, her fingers closing around his. "Absolutely worth it, because you have given me back something I did not realize I had lost, the freedom to simply be myself without constant apology or performance. Even if complications arise, especially because they will arise, the alternative is returning to an isolation that appears strong but feels like a slow fading." She squeezed his hand with quiet resolve. "Will you stay through the difficulties ahead?" "I am not going anywhere," Kai promised. "We will navigate this together." Over the following weeks, they did exactly that. Kai continued attending council sessions, offering perspectives when invited, while carefully supporting the Queen's final decisions rather than appearing to direct them. Queen Elara chose moments of connection thoughtfully, occasional conversations in semi-private settings, shared observations during formal events, allowing their bond to be visible without overt scandal. The court adjusted gradually, some advisors resisting while others recognized the renewed vitality in their sovereign's leadership. Council discussions grew more dynamic. Decisions showed fresh creativity. Connection had not weakened her rule. It had revitalized the ancient heart that had waited decades to feel truly seen. Their conversation unfolded naturally in the midst of the formal setting. Kai offered clear observations about potential efficiencies in guild negotiations, while acknowledging the strategic importance of maintaining traditional controls. Queen Elara listened attentively, asking questions that drew out deeper considerations, and occasionally adding insights from her own long experience. Around them, members of the court watched with varying degrees of acceptance. Some advisors still appeared unsettled by the visible familiarity, yet others had begun to recognize its benefits. No one dared interrupt. As their discussion continued, Kai noticed how Queen Elara's horns caught the hall's crystal light, sending gentle rainbow reflections across her features. Her skin remained warmly lit with that copper-gold tone that now felt familiar to him, a visible sign of engagement and comfort in his presence. The ancient heart that had once remained locked behind perfect discipline now showed itself more openly, no longer afraid of the quiet vulnerability that came with being truly seen. Later that evening, away from watchful eyes, they walked together through the royal gardens along their now familiar paths. The bioluminescent plants created soft pools of light that guided their steps, while the three moons cast a gentle silver glow over everything. Queen Elara moved with relaxed grace, her hand occasionally brushing against his as they walked. "My historians will have many questions about this chapter of our history," she said thoughtfully, pausing beside a cluster of glowing memory vines. "They will wonder about the human ambassador who arrived with careful protocol and somehow reminded their queen that she could be more than tradition alone." "What will you tell them?" Kai asked, turning to face her. "That the most meaningful breakthroughs rarely come from grand treaties or strategic alliances alone," she replied. "Sometimes they arrive in the simple act of two people from different worlds choosing to see each other clearly and to care without calculation. Sovereignty grows stronger when it allows space for genuine connection rather than demanding complete isolation. Isolation may appear as strength, but true power often lies in the courage to remain whole. Kai reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers with the easy familiarity that had developed over months of shared conversations and quiet moments. "You have changed things for the better," he said softly, "not only for yourself, but for your people as well. They are beginning to see that their queen can lead with both wisdom and warmth." Queen Elara leaned gently against his shoulder, her crystalline horns brushing lightly near his temple, in a gesture of trust she had never allowed before. "You ignited something I thought had grown cold long ago," she murmured. "An ancient heart that had forgotten how to hope for simple companionship, for honest laughter, for the feeling of being valued as Elara rather than only as the eternal sovereign." She paused, her emerald eyes meeting his with open affection. "There are still challenges ahead. Some factions within the court continue to watch for any sign of weakness. External observers from other systems remain curious about this unusual bond between Oralis royalty and a human representative. Yet I find I care less about perfect appearances and more about living with honesty." Kai smiled, his thumb tracing a gentle pattern across the back of her hand. "Then we continue choosing this path together, one conversation at a time, one shared moment at a time. Whatever difficulties arise, we face them as we have from the beginning, with respect, with honesty, and with the understanding that connection itself carries its own quiet strength." They continued their walk deeper into the gardens, pausing occasionally to admire the living history woven into the glowing plants and crystal formations. Queen Elara shared more stories from her early years on the throne, moments of doubt and determination she had never voiced aloud before. Kai listened with the same genuine interest that had first caught her attention, occasionally offering perspectives from human experiences that made her laugh softly or nod in thoughtful agreement. As the night deepened, the ancient heart that had been awakened by one accidental touch now beat with steady warmth. The queen, who had ruled for 50 years in perfect isolation, had discovered that allowing herself to be seen did not diminish her power. It expanded it in ways no ancient tradition had ever anticipated. And in the quiet spaces between their words, both Kai and Elara understood that this unexpected bond had become something far greater than either had imagined when that first gentle contact sparked its beginning. The seasons turned gently on Orion Prime, bringing new blooms to the royal gardens and fresh perspectives to the council chambers. What had once seemed a radical departure from tradition had gradually woven itself into the fabric of daily life at court. Nobles who once whispered in concern now spoke with measured acceptance. Advisors who had resisted most strongly began to recognize the benefits of a sovereign who approached governance with renewed vitality and clearer insight. The dominion itself appeared more dynamic, its decisions reflecting both the wisdom of centuries and the fresh energy that came from honest connection. Queen Elara continued to fulfill her responsibilities with the same dedication that had defined her long reign. She presided over important sessions with clear authority, made difficult choices when necessary, and maintained the stability her people had come to expect. Yet she also carved out space for moments that reminded her, and those around her, that she remained an individual with thoughts, feelings, and the capacity for genuine warmth. The crystalline horns that had once served as distant symbols of untouchable lineage now occasionally caught light in ways that seemed to reflect inner peace rather than perfect control. Kai's role evolved naturally as well. He attended council sessions when invited, offering perspectives grounded in human experience while always respecting the Queen's final authority. Their private conversations continued to explore ideas about leadership, culture, and the challenges of bridging different worlds. Through it all, he remained mindful of his position as ambassador, ensuring that their personal bond never overshadowed the broader goals of peaceful cooperation between humanity and the Oralis dominion. One quiet evening, as they walked once more along the familiar path to the secluded overlook, Queen Elara spoke with reflective calm. "I once believed that true strength required complete separation from personal needs, that a sovereign must stand apart to see clearly. You showed me a different possibility, that caring deeply and allowing oneself to be seen can actually sharpen judgment rather than cloud it. My people are beginning to understand this too, in their own way. Kai nodded, appreciating how far they had come since that first accidental touch in the Great Hall. Sometimes the smallest moments create the largest changes, a gentle brush against something sacred, an honest question asked without fear, a willingness to sit together on a simple bench when all tradition demanded distance. Those moments reminded you that even ancient hearts can awaken and grow. They reached the overlook and stood together, looking out over the glowing capital city spread beneath the three moons. The view never failed to inspire a sense of connection to the land, to the people, and to each other. Queen Elara leaned gently into his side, her hand finding his with natural ease. The ancient heart that had stirred to life months ago now beat with steady, warm confidence. It no longer feared vulnerability, because it had discovered that true strength often grows from the courage to embrace it. As they stood in comfortable silence, both understood that their story had become part of Orion's living history. Future generations would speak of the human ambassador who arrived with careful protocol and, through patience and genuine respect, helped their queen remember the value of connection alongside duty. They would tell how one unintended touch had ignited something long dormant, an ancient heart ready to feel, to care, and to lead with both wisdom and warmth. The path ahead would undoubtedly hold new challenges. Diplomatic relations between worlds required constant attention. Court dynamics would continue to evolve. Yet with each shared conversation and quiet moment, Kai and Queen Elara grew more certain that choosing connection had been the right decision. It had brought new depth to her leadership and unexpected joy to her long reign. For Kai, it had transformed a formal posting into something far more meaningful, a genuine bond that crossed vast distances of culture and tradition. In the gardens below, soft lights continued to glow, carrying genetic memories of centuries past, while welcoming new stories being written in the present. The Dominion thrived under a queen who had learned that perfection was not the only measure of greatness. Sometimes the greatest strength came from allowing oneself to be fully seen, fully human, or in her case, fully auralis, with all the beautiful complexity that brought. As the night deepened around them, Queen Elara turned to Kai with a gentle smile that reached her emerald eyes fully. "Thank you for seeing me clearly from the very beginning, for igniting what I thought had grown cold, for walking this path with me, whatever it may bring." Kai returned her smile, his hand warm around hers. "And thank you for trusting enough to let that spark grow." Together, they looked toward the future with quiet hope, knowing that some connections were worth every risk and every beautiful complication they created along the way. If you enjoyed this tale of unexpected connection across worlds, consider supporting more stories like this by exploring similar journeys in the HFY Soundscape collection, where ordinary moments spark extraordinary changes and hearts awaken in the most surprising ways. Your thoughts and shares help bring these stories to more listeners who appreciate heartfelt adventures among the stars.